Those of you who know me know I'm rarely at a loss for words, but this time perhaps. This has been quite a morning. In 1981, in the dark days of the Soviet Union, I was invited to join a group of so-called Jewish book publishers to attend the Moscow International Book Fair, which was held every 2 years then. They put our booth in the most difficult place to find in the large convention hall. And they only allowed the booth to be there in the first place because, to their credit, some other major publishing houses said that if we didn't go, they wouldn't go either. Our effort was really a bit of a facade, I can say today. It wasn't really about book publishing. It was about trying to connect with Jews in the Soviet Union and maybe give them some information, some material, yes, some books. Well, despite the KGB's best efforts to hide us in the vast hall, the Jews found us. So much so that from morning till night, hundreds and hundreds of Jews would line up, blocking the entrance to the other booths in the area in order to visit our stall and see what we had. And I recall very vividly one elderly man who lingered in the booth, and it was my job as the Russian speaker to approach him and to ask him if he would kindly move on because of the long lines. And he looked at me with these very plaintive eyes, and he said to me, "Молодой парень, young man, вы не можете понимать это. You can't understand this, but I've never before seen Jewish books. I've never before seen Jewish items. Don't deny me this chance, if only once in my lifetime, to breathe the Jewish air of this space." I've never forgotten that, and I mention it today because the Jewish air, the hopeful air, the optimistic air of this space, of this global forum, of each global forum, is what gives me the strength to start again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after. And I want us to think together for a few moments about the last 48 to 72 hours. But not to think about necessarily whether you were entertained by a particular speaker, or even, yes, how long a particular speaker might have spoken. At the end of the day, those are not the measures of what this global advocacy is all about. Think about it another way. Think about the fact that there were 10 world leaders who confirmed their attendance at this global forum. You heard from 5 last night. You heard from General McMaster on Sunday representing the United States. You heard from the Secretary General of the Organization of American States this morning. And 3 foreign ministers who had confirmed, each for very understandable reasons, had to cancel. One, though, you saw on film promising to be with us in Jerusalem next year. The second you heard via the Italian ambassador also saying he will be in Jerusalem next year, though I have to add, and he's a friend, given the vagaries of Italian politics, I wouldn't bet on who's the foreign minister 12 months from today. And the third, the foreign minister of Togo, had very much wanted to be here and was especially important, Stan. And Marion, because he would have been the first African foreign minister to address us, but instead he was with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Liberia for that important conference. But think about this. Think about that Austrian foreign minister for a moment. I do, and I'll tell you why. because in my office in New York, I have on the wall a diploma in German, which was issued to Eric Harris in 1975. It was an honorary doctorate issued to him by the University of Vienna for work that he had done from 1936 to 1938 on the synthesis of the heavy hydrogen atom. My father was 16 years old in 1936. Why 1938? Because of the Anschluss. Because from that day forward, my father and others like him were no longer deemed worthy of studying the synthesis of the heavy hydrogen atom or anything else at the university. Their jobs instead initially were to shine the boots of Nazi officers, and then, if they could, to take their fate into their own hands, as my father did, arriving in the United States 7 years later after the Second World War and after a harrowing story. That same Austria is the Austria that today is represented by Foreign Minister Sebastian Kurz, who speaks about historical responsibility, who speaks about the fight against anti-Semitism, who speaks about the friendship with Israel. History can move forward. And AJC is determined to become an author of history. We will never, ever be prisoners of history. We will never become paralyzed by history, nor will we simply be observers of the history from the sidelines. For Israel, as Ron Dermer said, the significance of the rebirth of the Jewish state may be found perhaps in those words in Hatikva, Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people in our own land. For all of us Jews around the world, it means we have the power to act. Individuals like my father did act, courageously, heroically even, but he was alone. Today we have both the State of Israel and we have the platform of organizations like AJC, and we can witness transformations like we did in Austria. When AJC first became involved with Japan in the late 1980s, the world's second largest economy, the bulk of Japanese companies openly adhere to the Arab boycott against Israel. As Israelis will tell you, other than Subarus, they couldn't get many Japanese-made cars because others were adhering to the boycott, and on and on. Today, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe considers himself a close personal friend of the Prime Minister of Israel, a partner of the State of Israel, and linked, as you heard from Minister Sonora, linked closely to AJC. History can move forward, but it takes the power to act, the will to act, and the intelligence in how to act. You heard from President Anastasiadis of Cyprus. In the 1980s, when Cyprus was a card-carrying member of the non-aligned movement, the non-aligned movement that carried so much of the water in the global campaign against Israel and against Zionism, the idea of forging a strategic partnership among Cyprus and Greece and Israel seems impossible. Greece, by the way, was the last country in Western Europe to formally de jure recognize the State of Israel. And it took more than 4 decades. But AJC began dreaming in the mid-1980s about an alternative, not fact, but vision. Today, the vision is real. You saw it, you heard it from this podium, from President Anastasiadis. Next week in Thessaloniki, he said, Prime Minister Tsipras, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he will meet for yet another in the trilateral meetings. And if you listen carefully to what he said and even what he hinted at, the relationship between Greece and Cyprus and Israel is deep, very deep, and broad, very broad. But in that effort, beginning in the mid-1980s, AJC did not act alone. We had our Hellenic American partners, people here who also couldn't understand why the democracies of the Eastern Mediterranean weren't the most natural and cooperative partners. We worked together in that quintessential AJC fashion of forging coalitions and partnerships. And 35 years later, 40 years later, you see President Anastasiadis come with members of his cabinet, with the Archbishop of the Greek Orthodox Church of North America, with Hellenic American leaders, and look at what has been achieved. Ani ma'amim, I believe. We must all believe. You had here President Iohannis of Romania. Until 1989, Romania was a country governed by a notorious dictator named Ceausescu, and before him by another one named Gheorghe Dej. Yes, Romania was the exception in the communist bloc. It never severed ties with Israel, unlike the others in the Warsaw Pact. But at the same time, it was a brutal authoritarian country. In 1989, that came to a screeching halt. The Ceausescus were gone, and Romania embarked on that rocky road leading to post-communism democratic life. Today, Romania is an integral part of NATO, of the European Union. And if you listen carefully last night, Romania today has, and I quote the president, a special strategic relationship with Israel. A special strategic relationship with Israel. A far cry from where it had been. And Romania, a country with a rather complex record during the Second World War, to say the least, became the country that led 35 other countries in adopting the working definition on anti-Semitism. History can change. History can move forward. It takes people and institutions of vision and iron will and determination. It can happen. The young woman you just heard from, Ariela Rifkin, also speaks Russian, I'm told, because at least one of her parents came from that Soviet Union that I described at the beginning. But since that time, millions of Jews from the Soviet Union have found new lives. The Soviet Union, thankfully, no longer exists. And with all the challenges that Russia poses, Russia and Israel have a strong bilateral relationship. History can change. History can move forward. Ani ma'amin, I believe. We, collectively, global Jewish advocates, we can do it. We saw here one of the most powerful sights I think any of us will see in our lifetimes. 3 religious leaders sitting here together in the first row who flew specially from Haifa. People, as you can see, of deep personal faith. It's obvious. People who came here proud of their faiths, and yet people who came here as brothers. In a nutshell, that's our vision, captured in the Unity Award. Our vision of a pluralistic America and world. And again, I repeat what I said Sunday night, let's discard the word tolerance from our lexicon. We don't want to tolerate one another. We want to achieve sisterhood and brotherhood, and we saw it on display today. Let's not define ourselves by the bar of low expectations. We deserve better. The work of the Muslim Jewish Leadership Council, the work of the Latino Jewish Leadership Council, the focus we placed at this Global Forum on African American Jewish relations, the work that we do day in and day out with faiths across the world, led by Rabbi David Rosen, Rabbi Noam Marins. All of this is part of a game plan that didn't begin yesterday. It began, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, 3,000 years ago through the faith of our prophets. AJC in 1906 decided to become a megaphone for those prophets. We created an institution around the prophetic vision, a prophetic vision of a world at peace and a world in harmony. And 111 years later, a lot has gotten in the way and made our task more difficult. But we're not deterred any more than our recipients of the Campus Courage Award today and on Sunday were deterred, any more than our LIFT students whom you've seen today and on Sunday are going to be deterred on campus, because we also know that Japan can reverse itself on the Arab boycott, that Cyprus can move from a leader of the non-aligned movement in opposition to Israel to a key partner of Israel, because Romania can emerge from the Soviet bloc with a special strategic relationship with Israel, because we know that we can open an office in Warsaw today, and we could not have opened that office in 1939 or 1943, or for that matter in 1950 or 1960 or 1970. And through the generosity of John Shapiro and Shani Silverberg, joined by Gail Binderman and Harriet and Len Schleifer, and Amy and Steve Zelkowitz, that office is up and running because we believe in the future. We believe in writing history, not simply reading history. And that's part of our determination to fight back and, yes, to prevail. So I know I got the message in my inbox that some of you are quite depressed about life and the world and what you're watching on your screens 24/7. There's little escape from it. But if you came in any way depressed, if I'm somehow describing you, I hope these last 48 or so hours may have changed your mind. It's easy to succumb to despair. It's easy to go into the fetal position. It's easy to try and circle the mental wagons and say the world's against us, there's no hope, so I'm going to live my life as narrowly as I possibly can to avoid it. But you know it, there's no avoiding it. There's no avoiding it, and there's no reason to avoid it. Life is the biggest gift we will ever have, and we've got one chance at making a good life. We've got one chance at making a meaningful life. What we all learn at some stage is that this is not a rehearsal. This is it. This is our chance. There's no other. And history and perhaps our own conscience will judge us by how we reacted to this one chance that we have. I've always taken great inspiration, this is my schmaltzy side, from the lyrics from Man of La Mancha, from the song in particular, The Impossible Dream. And the last thing in the world I would want to do is subject you to my singing. I learned that Harriet Schleifer has a beautiful voice, and maybe one day we can get her up here and possibly accompanied by Gail Binderman on the piano. But I just want to read for you a couple of lines because these two are our elevator pitch. To dream the impossible dream, to run where the brave dare not go, to try when your arms are too weary, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, then my heart will be peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. That's my epitaph, I hope. Not soon. That's the standard by which I want to live my life. That's the standard by which I want AJC to live its life. We, in the coming hour or two, have the power to take the inspiration of the last 48 hours of our award winners, of our students, of our faith leaders. We have the power to take it and to go to Capitol Hill with over 200 separate meetings in the Senate and the House, and to be as smart and to be as sophisticated and to be as persuasive as we possibly can and to move the needle. And I can only tell you, having been a small part in the Soviet Jewry movement, in the effort to reverse Japan's boycott, in the creation of the strategic triangle in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the effort to bring down the Iron Curtain, no one meeting, no one speech, no one conference will do it. It doesn't happen like that. But every single meeting and conference and action brings us a step closer. And you don't know when finally, the water will tip over. So you're going to go down to the Hill. I wish you enormous success in each of your meetings. And I also want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank our remarkable staff, who are often a bit too shy to come on stage. But let me tell you, they have literally worked day and night for a very long time to make this a success. And finally, as we would say at the Passover Seder, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem, but wait. There's no shtick here. We are already over 50% subscribed for our maximum capacity in Jerusalem next year. Already over 50% subscribed. So if you're thinking of going, as I hope you are, if you're thinking of bringing your high school and college-age children or your healthy parents and making it a 2 or 3 generation trip, I urge you, when you leave this hall, to go immediately to the registration desk to get more information, to learn about all the things we're planning, and to sign up. And together, let us say, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Thank you. Godspeed.